evening, everyone. My name is Etienne Murray. Welcome to this webinar on processing photographs and software. Just a bit of background. Learn the Birds is a platform that Derek and I created essentially to provide quality content for the birding community, for ornithologists, for people interested in birds and bird photography. And it was born out of our mutual interest in birds around us. And Derek is a former history professor, biology professor, sorry, not history, but he's good on history too. Very keen bird photographer and tech geek. And I've been involved with running birding courses and giving lectures for about 15 years. So tonight's webinar will basically delve into the issue of processing your photography, your photographs, using open source software. So with that said, over to Derek.
So the title of this presentation is Buy Equipment, Not Software. And the reason I'm is it still saying pause?
No, it's fine. It's okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the reason I decided to do this presentation is that I see a lot of people taking photographs and then not quite having an idea of how to do the processing, and the fact that you know, there's plenty of free and open source software available for processing bird photos or any kind of photos for that matter. And I have a strong background in open source software, been a proponent of it for many years. And sorry, my clicker is gone, battery's gone, sorry. Yeah, so I've got a little presentation here, and then we're going to jump straight into the software. But I just thought maybe it's a good idea to, first of all, say what is free and open source software, and then secondly, you know, what would we use it for in terms of bird photography. I'm not sure what's going on there. It's gone back to the first slide. Ah, there we go. Free or open source software is software for which the original source code is made freely available, and it can be redistributed and modified. So a lot of software is used by people who have the skills to code, and I do quite a bit of coding on open source software as well. But even if you don't do coding, the availability of the software means that other people can contribute to the software and make it better. And common ways that open source software is developed is someone who wants to use it themselves. So these are people who are scratching an itch. And if you look at Digicam, which is the first application that I'm going to show you, this was developed by a group of people primarily in France who are photographers and also programmers, and decided to bring their programming skills and their photography skills together. And over the years, it grew into a big community. And now there's a significant number of people contributing source code and documentation and bug reports and things like that to it, which I've also done, bug reports, not writing code. It could be a community with a common interest. So even something like Digicam, which started off as someone scratching their own itch, it can grow into a community. So there's quite a lot of software that have a community behind it. And you know, these two scratching your own itch and being part of a community kind of go hand in hand. The Darktable application, which I'm going to show you as well. Yes, Jintan, I'm going to use Darktable, and that's also a community development. Then there's you know, software that businesses might develop because they have a common need. You know, there's this idea in the world of business that was coined by Ray Noorder, the founder of Novell Systems, called coopetition, and software is an area where businesses is not normally the core business. So those businesses can collaborate in order to create software that they can all use. So Linux, which I'm using here at the moment, so you're seeing this via Linux, is developed primarily by a combination of a community and businesses. So companies like IBM have invested billions in Linux. And by the way, if you run an Android operating system, if you have an Android phone or tablet, you're using Linux. So businesses with a common need. If you look at GIMP, which I'm going to show you, which is sort of the Photoshop equivalent, Disney has invested quite a bit in that because they use it in some of the imaging. Some of the publishers that do magazines and books and things have also invested in GIMP. And then there's freemium, the freemium model, where you get a free version and then you can pay for extra features, or you can pay for support or whatever. So those are the four probably the most common ways in which the software gets developed. So I started exclusively using open source software in 2001. I don't use anything else, except occasionally when it's required for a job I have to do. But by and large, everything that I've done since 2001 has been done on open source software. I started with open source software in the early 90s, and it kind of became the thing that I use. So all everything I do is done on Linux. All the videos I make, all the presentations, live streaming, anything that I do is basically done on Linux, and I use LibreOffice. And right now we're using LibreOffice Presenter, which is the equivalent of PowerPoint. I use Open Broadcaster software for live streaming and for recording desktop, for desktop capture and that kind of thing. And I have quite a few videos using this under my Kenga Solutions business YouTube channel. For editing videos, I mostly use OpenShot, which is an open source application. It's another one that started off as a scratching your own itch, and it's now become a community. For programming, I use Eclipse and Visual Studio Code, which is actually Microsoft's biggest contribution to open source. For audio recording, I use Audacity, and Learn the Birds is running on WordPress, which is an open source application. So now, having gotten that out of the way, why would we want to edit our photos? Well, obviously, we might shoot in RAW. Typically, when we're shooting birds, we can never get them exactly positioned in the viewfinder. So we almost always have to do some cropping. Also, the camera is not your eye. You may look at something and see it a certain way, but the camera sees it a different way. And just as in the film days, when you had to process the film, you still have to do some processing of the images to make them best. And by the way, for those who say that it's wrong to be processing images, what you're saying is actually it's wrong for a human to be processing the image. You rather allow an algorithm in a software system to process the image for you without any input from you. That's kind of a strange thing to say. The other is, the image. I always see the image as the canvas, not the painting. So it's the thing that you start to work with in order to create the final product. It's not necessarily the final product. And often you can have some images that look pretty terrible, but if you process them well, they can be salvaged. And then you can do really cool things with images as well if you process them. So what are some of the things that we're going to do, or you can do with the software that we're talking about here? Obviously, you can download the images from your camera. So that's the first part of managing your workflow. You can organize and manage the images. That's another important part of your workflow. You can tag and catalog the images. You can find the images that you've saved and use them. You can export them to different services like Flickr, for example. Obviously, you can process the raw files. Now, these boxes are a different color here. So the green one's what I typically do with Digicam. The blue is what I typically do with Darktable. So process the raw files, edit the images, do some improvements and apply some filters, maybe do some specialized edits and process with some specialized filters, and also export them in different formats. And then if I want to do something further with the image, that's where I bring in the GIMP. So this is pretty much the same kind of principle that you would have if you were using Adobe tools. You'd have Lightroom, excuse me, you'd have Lightroom for doing all the green and blue stuff, and you'd have Photoshop for doing the bottom two of the blue and the other color boxes that I've got here. So what is the software that we're going to use? I've mentioned it, Digicam. So Digicam is the one that I use for collecting, for managing the collection. And you can also do some basic editing with it, but I don't typically do editing with Digicam because I shoot in RAW, and Digicam is not the best tool for editing RAW. It can do it in a pinch if you want to, but the Darktable is much better for handling RAW files than Digicam. But you can always take some of the output from, you know, maybe you want to apply some kind of filter that Digicam has or whatever. You can edit the output of Darktable using Digicam as well. Then Darktable is a very feature-rich raw processing tool. This is, I've never used Lightroom, but I've watched other people use it, and I can tell you that this is significant improvement on Lightroom. It's got a lot more features, a lot more functionality, a lot more capability. Of course, it may also be slightly harder to use because it's got more capability. And then GIMP, which stands for GNU Image Management Program. I use for additional touching up, editing, so blurring background if I want to do that, or adding special effects, or maybe I want to remove the background and put in a sky or something like that, then that's what GIMP is for. Okay, so now let's just go straight over to the first package, which is Darktable, which is Digicam. And so Digicam is basically allows you to do your collection management. So obviously you can browse, you can look at, you can put things into albums, and these are my albums here. They basically correspond to folders on your hard drive, which I like, because even if I throw away Digicam, I still have access to my files and all the metadata, unlike Lightroom, where you have to bend over backwards to ensure that when you do change Lightroom, you don't actually lose your collection. With Digicam, the collection is just files on your hard drive, and much of the metadata is actually written inside the image. There are sidecar files as well that Darktable uses, but for Digicam, most of the data is written inside the image. And then it just uses a standard ordinary old run-of-the-mill database that lives on the hard drive that you can access. And even if you, even if you lose Digicam, you can still edit the data in the database. So it's a very, I've never lost anything from Digicam ever. So if you look across the top here, you've got some menu items. I meant to change my cursor. Just bear with me a second. I'll give you a cursor that you can see better. If I can remember how to do it. Tweaks. Oh, I'm just showing you how to do another little trick on. Somewhere here, there is appearance, cursor, and I want the green. There we go. Okay, so hopefully, okay, that's interesting. It goes away when it goes over Digicam. Okay, it only comes back when it's on a menu item or clickable item. So if you look across the top here, you can see there's various menu items here. Edit, view, tools, import, export, settings. I never use the menu because everything is got a shortcut, or it's on this pop-out panel over here. So then if you look here, you've got albums, which is the view that we are in at the moment, albums. Then you've got tags. So tags are basically just like it says, tags, their names. So if I want to find ant-eating chat, for example, I can just click on ant-eating chat and it brings up all my photos of ant-eating chats where I've tagged them. If I want to find arrow mark babblers, I can find arrow mark babblers. Maybe I want ashy tit. There's all my ashy tit photos. Australian cassowary, how about that one? Okay, now I don't know why the elephants are tagged with that, but that's kind of odd. And what else? Banded marten. So you can see that you can. It's a way to tag the photos. What's also of interest here, aside from the fact of tagging them and refining them, is that you can actually tag the photos with machine tags. And I have almost all the photos that I upload to Flickr are tagged with machine tags. So I'm just going to get over to one. So here you go. So you see taxonomy of binomial equals Aninga rufa. That's the African darter. So what this means is that when and this tag is actually written inside the image. So when I upload those photos to Flickr, they can automatically be found. And if you look at Wikipedia, for example, for South African birds, you'll find that a lot of my photos are illustrating those Wikipedia articles because there is a program that looks on Flickr for suitably licensed images and pulls them into the Wikimedia Commons. And that's how the machine applications, rather than human applications, are able to find them. And it's part of the reason why my photos on Flickr are now sitting on 11 million views, because of the machine tagging, making them easy to find. And then you can label things, you can search you can do by dates, you can have a timeline, you can search, there's a lot of features here for dealing with people as well. You can, sorry, that's this one down here. And similarities. You can search for an image that's similar to that one, for example. And you can also search on a map. I'm not going to show you those because I've got so many pictures that it just takes forever for the page to load. And then if you look over here, you can see that when I open an image, you can see there's properties of the image here. It was taken in 2015 using a Canon EF 400mm f5.6 lens on a Canon 7D Mark II camera, etc. It's tagged as African darter and all of that stuff. So you could add metadata. You can see that there's geolocation metadata and all of that stuff inside the image. You can add captions here, and the captions stored in the image. So when I upload the image then to Flickr, or use it, for example, on Learn the Birds, that caption becomes the caption of the image. So that's in a nutshell what Digicam does. Obviously, you can import from your camera. If you've got your camera from a card reader, you can import from Google Photos and all of those sorts of things as well. I never use this. I actually manually download my photos from my camera because I like to have them first go in the operating system with the same file names and everything that they have in the camera. And I organize them by the place and the date. So I prefer to do that manually. It doesn't take any, it has no advantage. And Digicam, when you open it the first time, it scans your albums for any new folders and adds them to the database, and it's quite quick to do that. So that's Digicam in a nutshell. So what I typically do with Digicam, I'm just going to open Darktable here for a second. So what I typically do with Digicam is when I want to edit a photo, and let me find some newer ones that are in RAW. For that, I need to go back to the albums. Okay, so here's the ones that I've got for us to play with today. So if I want to edit this photo, for example, if I double click it, this is a low resolution preview of the image that I've configured Digicam to use. And it's not, it's not you can zoom in on it and you'll see that it's pretty low resolution. So what I typically do is I will edit that photo in Darktable. So what I'm going to just do is move this off to one side. Let me just close down this, and then I'm going to bring Darktable in here and move it to the other side, theoretically. Okay, doesn't want to allow me to do that with this cursor switched on. So, okay, so that's because Darktable won't go any smaller than that with these panels open. So what I'm going to do, I'll let it sit behind there. I'm going to say open with, and I'm going to say Darktable. So you can see now it is opened in Darktable. So let me maximize Darktable. And now you can see there's the hoopoe. And you can already see that it's a much higher resolution image. You can also see that it's quite grainy because it hasn't been processed. It's straight out of the camera. And you can also see that, the bird is in the center of the image and it's surrounded by a lot of trees and stuff. This is probably not how I would want to present the image. So I will probably do some processing of it. So what you'll see, if you look over here on the left-hand side, you'll see there's a panel. And on the right-hand side, you'll see there's a panel. Now, I'm not going to go through all the features of Darktable here tonight because it will take forever and a day. But what you can see here is that when Darktable opens the image, it says, okay, I know the camera that the image came from, so I know some of the settings that should be applied when an image is being processed from that camera. So that's a camera profile. Most of these applications have camera profiles. Lightroom also has these camera profiles. And if you don't have a camera profile, if there isn't a profile for your camera, with Darktable, the community will usually create one if the company hasn't created one, if the camera manufacturer hasn't created one. So what we have on this side here is we can do snapshots. So we can take a shot of what this image is like now and then look at it later. I'm not going to do that. And then you'll see a whole list of 10 things that have been done to the image. So those are the things the Darktable says I need to do when the image comes out of the camera before anything else is done. You can, of course, remove any of those if you want. You can compress the history stack, as it's called. So if I wanted to leave it without the base curve, you can see it looked pretty ugly. Without the base curve, it wouldn't look nice, but I could go down here and click compress the history stack, and it would compress it down to 9. Okay, so let's do a, what should we do? An exposure. Let's do an exposure here and let's mess it up badly. Okay, so you can see that's too big an exposure. So I can just simply go back to the base curve here and say compress history stack. So the reason is that editing with Darktable is non-destructive. So nothing is actually done to the underlying image. All Darktable does is it produces some XML, which is only applied when you write out the image in a different format. Okay, and then you can do things like scan for duplicates. You can there's color pickers. You can also do tagging in Darktable. But the great thing about open source software is because it's free, you can pick the best tool for the job. So for me, I don't like Darktable's tagging. For other people, maybe it will work. But just for me, because of what I do with my photos, I upload them to Flickr and I encourage people to make use of them for any purpose they want without needing any further permission to do so. I want my tags to be machine tags and to be managed well. And Darktable for me doesn't do that. But if you just want to put in a species name or location or something like that, Darktable can do that as well. And then you can also look at the image information. This is the same image information that we saw in Digicam. I never use that because I've already looked at that in Digicam. And Digicam is what I use for managing my my images. You can also create masks and manage them here. So we'll talk about masks in a minute. Okay, so now if I come over here on the right-hand side, you can see that there's a bunch of things here. There's a show only active modules button icon. Then there's a favorites icon. Then there's basic tools icon. Then there's a tone group icon, a color group icon, correction group icon, and then effects group icon. So these are simply organizers for different modules of Darktable. I usually put the ones that I use the most in my favorites, and you can see that exposure is open because we just used it. You can see that base curve is on and sharpen is on because it was detected as a good thing to do with this image. Okay, so one of the things that you also want to do, and you can have this done automatically, but I don't like having it done automatically because I like choosing which denoise system I'm going to use, whether local means or the one that is profiled in the camera's profile. Most of the time, the profiled one works, but sometimes if there's really, really bad noise, that non-local means works better. So I will click denoise, and you can see already that the noise has gone away here if your resolution, screen resolution is high enough. And then what I typically will do is, at minimum, I will go to contrast equalizer. And this is a really interesting tool. You can denoise with it as well. I don't typically do it, but occasionally I have when I've had images that were so noisy I couldn't get anything else to fix them. I managed to fix them here. So it's got three things. It's got luma, chroma, and edges. So luma is basically, it's a way to sharpen the image or blur it for that matter. Chroma is a way to add color at scale. So if you wanted to go, if you went over here, you basically, sorry, let me just go to chroma. If you went over here and you increase the chroma here, you would be increasing the chroma for pixel groups that are in this size range. Whereas if you went over here, you'd pretty much be increasing the chroma for like the background area, but you would hardly touch the main object itself. So I sometimes will apply chroma here, and you can see that the hoopoe has lost a little bit of its color somehow. And so we could go here and increase the size of our cursor, our selection area here, maybe like that. And if I bring it up a little bit, you can see the hoopoe is starting to get extra color and look a little bit more like the way our eye sees it. But it didn't change anything over here in these larger swaths of color. This is just something that you will learn after a while. You become familiar with what's the best way to do it. You can double click any of these points and send it back, and you can see that it's much duller there. I make it a little bit smaller and bring it up, and now you can see that it's got more of the richer brown tone. Luma is basically a way to sharpen the image, and again at scale. So you can sharpen it at a big scale and it will really look weird. So I typically go down here and I will sharpen it a little bit before I write out the image, and you can see a little tiny bit of increase in the sharpness of the image here, but don't overdo it. If you drag up the bottom here, up, you're actually denoising the image, but we've already denoised it, so I'm not going to do that. And then edges is basically you emphasizing the edges of things. I typically don't use that because it creates, for birds, it creates artifacts and it doesn't look nice. So that's basically what I do before I export it, and then I crop it. So the bird is, dead center in the image. That's not nice. So I'm going to go to crop, and then you can pick the kind of crop that you want to use. So if I'm going to send it to Instagram, for example, I'll go there and pick a square crop. And maybe I'll crop it down a little bit more. For Instagram, I would probably make it like that. So now it's cropped down and at the right shape for Instagram. So now I'm in the dark room. I go to the light table to do my export. So I go to the light table, and you can see there's an export that I did earlier there when I was testing something. Okay, let's just remove that. We don't want it there. And that doesn't delete anything. I'm just removing it from the light table. So now I select the image and I go export. And you see that it says exporting one image. Okay, so now it's done. I can just move Darktable over to my other screen. I can go into this Darktable exported folder. So Darktable always by default exports into a folder called Darktable exported. For some reason, this is a version of Digicam doesn't automatically refresh. So you just manually refresh. And there's the image that we just exported, ready for Instagram. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just put that off to the side there again, bring Darktable back. Remember that Darktable editing is non-destructive, right? So we're going to go back into the dark room. There's our image, and there's our image before we cropped it. So I'll just compress the history stack. And then I'd like to have another one that I can use as a slide in a presentation. So I go back to crop and rotate, and I choose 16:9. And maybe I want it to look like that. And so I crop it like that. All the other things that we've done, the contrast equalizer, the denoise profile, all of the slight color enhancements and everything that we did are still there. The only thing we removed was the last thing we did, which was crop and rotate. Now I can go back to the light table and I can export it. And I've got two versions of the same image, one for Instagram and one for to use in a slide. So if I go back to Digicam and I refresh, it hadn't finished when I refreshed. Let's try again. Let's do one more. I am in the right place. Maybe I didn't export it. Let's just do that again. There it is. So there's the image in 16:9 form for for showing on a screen or yeah. So that's the basics of using Digicam and Darktable together. They make a really cool, really good combination. And there's so many things that you can do with the Digicam and Darktable working together. So I'm going to go back to Digicam here for a second and get another one of the sample images that we have here. And oops, sorry. Let me try that again. Yeah. So this is rattling cysticula. You can see it's got a lovely black mouth on the inside there, but you can see that it's quite overexposed here. So how might we fix that? So we go to open with Darktable, and I'm just going to move Digicam over onto my other screen where you can't see it. And here's our rattling testicular. And I'm going to do my denoise because that I always have to do. You can see that it's become smoother here and slightly sharper on the bird. But you can see, this area here is overexposed. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to exposure. And this is where Darktable really shines, is it has these masks. So you can turn off the masks. You can turn on different kinds of masks. This is a parametric mask. This is a drawn mask. This is a combination of drawn and parametric mask. So a parametric mask basically means you turn on the mask and you adjust it. And then whatever correction you apply to the image only applies to the area that was masked. So I'm going to just go here and choose a parametric mask. Then I'm going to go down here and click this little square so that the mask is turned on. Now you can see that everything in the image is masked, which is not terribly useful. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here and we're going to create an input mask, and we're going to drag the slider down. What you can see is the brighter the area is, the longer it stays yellow. And so we turn this down to about there. And then we're going to feather the mask a little bit so the edges of it are not sharp. Like that, maybe. A little bit of feathering so the edges of the image is not sharp. Now we turn off the mask because we want to see what we're doing, right? So we turn off the mask. Well, we turn off the display of the mask. The mask is actually still on. So now if we go up to the exposure handle here, and we turn it way up, you can see that it's only affecting the area that we masked. So what we typically will do is we'll zoom in on that area, and we will decrease the exposure just enough to get a little bit of detail back, but not enough that it goes, it starts to create a big shadow like that. So I'm thinking that about right here will do. And we can turn off the exposure module and turn it back on again so you can see the difference. Yeah. And you can see that the detail has come back. Some of the colors have come back, and you can actually see the feather details here. Okay, so now we can do the rest of whatever it is we're going to do. We can go to our contrast equalizer and give it a little bit of sharpening, and that's all probably I want to do. And then do a bit of cropping on it so it doesn't, it's too much. Yeah, it doesn't. This one doesn't look nice in this format, but that's just to give you an idea of how to do it. So there we go. Now we can export it again. Okay, so that's all I'm going to show you with Darktable. I'm going to close Darktable now. You get an idea. It's an incredibly powerful tool. If there's something that can be done with a photograph, Darktable can do it. Especially with a raw image. Okay, so what I've got here somewhere. Okay, what I had here, which here we go. Yes, so this is now already exported as a JPEG. So I've done that edit I've done that edit that we've just done on the other photographs, and I'm going to just edit this image in GIMP. So I'm going to just go open with GNU Image Manipulation Program. If you don't like GIMP because it has negative connotations, there is a sanitized version of it called Glimpse. But as long as you understand that it is just an acronym for GNU Image Manipulation Program, you should be fine. So here's the snake eagle sitting on a branch. It was very, very overcast, and it was very, very early in the morning. And this was at Lutzvai Reserve last weekend. So what are we going to do? What we're going to do is we're going to mask out the white background and put in a sky. How cool is that? So now we've opened it. And by the way, just so you understand why I use the JPEG, GIMP is not a raw editor. You can get a plugin for GIMP that allows it to open and edit raw files, but I don't see the point of that. So I don't have that plugin, and I've never used it. So the first thing we probably should do is crop the image a little bit. So we're going to go up here on the top. You'll see that GIMP has got a menu bar. You can see that down here it's got some tools, and down this side it's got some settings and more tools. And one of those tools is the layers tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to select a rectangle tool, and I'm just going to crop it a little bit like that. Okay, so then I go up to image, crop to selection. Okay, so now there's my my bird still sitting on its branch without all the white sky around it. Now I'm going to create a duplicate of this layer. So now I've made a duplicate of this layer. Now GIMP gives you many different ways to do foreground and background selection. The great thing about these high contrast images is that you can do a mask for the image and get a much better separation of the foreground from the background with a transparent background at the end. So I'm going to just name this black, white. Okay, so this is my base image down here, and now I've got this layer called black, white. What am I going to do here? So the first thing I'm going to do is go to colors up here, and I'm going to desaturate it. So, color to gray, color to grayscale. That should be what I want to do. Hopefully that's right. It's because I've got so many things going here at the moment. I think it's just taking a little bit of a slow time. There we go. Okay, so now I've got no color left in the image. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to get my curves tool. No, not levels, sorry, curves. And I'm going to just wickedly increase the saturation. So what I end up with is basically a black and white copy of the bird. You can see there's the bird underneath, and there's the basically just black of all the content and white of the sky. Now I'm going to just bring this up a little bit, and I'm going back to colors. I'm just going to see if I go to brightness contrast, if I can get a little more contrast here, and just turn the brightness down a little bit. So most of my image is now black. Everything that needs to be black is black. And what I can do is now is I can go up here and get my paintbrush, and I don't know why my paintbrush is oval. And then I just need to increase the size of it a little bit. Now I'm going to just paint out all these white areas here that are inside the bird. And just check if there's any major areas on the tree. And you would do this, obviously, you would take a couple minutes doing this. I'm not going to do any more than that. So now I've got this completely black and completely white area. And underneath that, I got the bird. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to right click on the layer with the original bird, and I'm going to add an alpha channel. So adding an alpha channel always in all editing software means that you're basically adding transparency. So if I add an alpha channel and then I delete the white, then I will get the transparent where the white is. So I'm going to add an alpha channel. If you don't do that, then you delete, you just get the background color. So now I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to go to colors, and I'm going to invert. No. Don't do that. Sorry, I was in the wrong layer when I did the invert. It's a very common thing for me to do. Okay, so let me do this again. I'm going to invert this layer. So now what was black is white, and the white sky is now black. Okay, so the reason for that is because I'm going to add a mask here. I'm going to add a layer mask, and it's a white full opacity. So that means that whatever's white here is going to be opaque, in other words, solid in the underlying image. Okay, so now I'm going to go here and I'm going to copy this layer, and I'm going to go here, right click. Sorry, I'm going to go here and paste it. Now you see it's a floating selection. So what I do, I go down here. Can you see the anchor down here, the green anchor? I go down here and click the anchor. And what it's doing is it's going to merge that floating selection into the underlying image in the mask layer. And then what's happened underneath, which I'm going to show you, is that where it's black, the images become transparent. So now you see what has happened there. And you'll see this is not very good. I should have done a little feathering and a few other things there, but I didn't. So now let's go back to Darktable. I got some skies that I photographed, and I think we'll use this one. So here's the sky, and I'm going to, where am I here? I need to open this in Darktable. So I open it with Darktable. And so there's the image in Darktable. I might just give it a little bit of a tone curve treatment here, just to make it a little bit better. It'll stand out a little bit better. And then I go back to my light table. I select this image and I export it. And by the way, this is the last thing I'm going to do, so we'll have time for questions after this. Okay, so hopefully it has exported, and we can refresh here. And there's the sky. So now I'm going to bring the sky, and to do that I need GIMP and Digicam on the screen at the same time. So I'm going to just drag this image in here, and I'm going to convert. Yes, I'm going to convert. Okay, so now you can see that this image is so much bigger than the one that I was using there. So I'm just going to right click here, and I'm going to say scale layer, just so I can see the size. 3292 is the width, right? So we want to make this sky scale layer 3292. So 3300. I'm just going to make it slightly bigger, so I don't have to fiddle with making it fit exactly pixel by pixel. And there you can see there's the sky. Now I'm going to just move it down to underneath that one. And you can see that I've got the bird against the sky. But guess what? Have you ever seen anybody photograph a bird up close like that, with the sky still in focus behind it? Obviously not. So this is not realistic. So we're going to go to filters, We're going to select the blur filter. We're going to select the Gaussian blur filter. And then we pick the size here. I think this is quite a big image. You can always undo by going Control Z if it's not right. So let's try that. So you can see that the sky is blurred and the bird now looks a little bit more natural against the sky. We could probably go filters and repeat the Gaussian blur. And you can see it's slightly more blurred now and it looks more natural against the sky. And there's a little bit more sky there than just the white sky. And you can play around with this as much as you want so you get it the way you want. You can see that there's a little bit of white edging here because I didn't do a feathering when I deleted the background. But you get the idea. So this is how you can create images that are composites like that. And like I said, obviously you'd play with it a little bit more, a little bit longer. And I will just save this. And close GIMP. I had one other one here. Do we have time to do it? Yeah, I think we've still got a couple minutes. It won't take long. So here's the rattling cysticula again with this black mouth. And I'm going to open it in GIMP. And I'm going to convert the color profile. Now, what you can see with this image is it's got a beautiful black inside of its mouth, but this dark here kind of takes away from that. So maybe if I was going to use this image for something, I might want to get rid of that dark area there. So what I can do is I can choose a tool like clone, and then I can pick the size of my brush, and then I can clone something like that, and I can go in there. Must make sure that you have a brush that is not hard. And go here. Oh, it's a little bit hard. And yeah. Okay, so I can, I can put in a little bit of background and play around with it. I can get a bit up there, mix it up a little bit, put it in there, a little bit in there. Maybe get a little bit of this over here to replace that so it doesn't look so artificial. And you play around with it like that. You get the idea. And you can see now much better the black inside the mouth. And obviously, if I was really seriously doing this, I would play around with the size of my brush and clean it up a bit more closer to the actual mouth itself. The other thing you can do is GIMP's got great foreground background selection tools. So we could mark the branch and the bird as foreground and blur the background to give you that fake bouquet that people like. That's another thing you can use this application for. So this is basically how I use free and open source software tools in my photography workflow. And hopefully that's been useful. And sorry, I'm just closing my things here. Hopefully that has been useful. And what I think we will do is, if people are interested, we can run some masterclasses, go into the details and show you how to do this. We can start off, downloading and installing and all of those things. Although I'm not a Windows person, I can run Windows in a virtual machine, so I can show you how all this works on Windows as well. yeah, so if you have any questions, please just type them into the chat box and Etienne will pick them up, and I will try my best to answer them.
Thanks, Derek. That's great. I think there are a couple of questions already. I just asked everyone to pose their questions on the chat forum. So Catherine's asking, when you've taken multiple images, what is your process of choosing which photo to edit? So how do you select?
So it depends on how big a hurry I'm in. You know, if I've just come back from a trip and I really want to get some pictures on Facebook, I'll pick the first one that looks nice. Otherwise, I'll sit and put all of the images in, will be on Digicam. So I'll use that view where you can see, you know, all the images lined up. And then I'll pick out the ones that are obviously blurry or, you know, overexposed or, you know, not focused, or you know, the bird's head is out of the photo, which I have a lot of from the weekend because I was trying to do little birds flying, and I got a lot of little bird tails. Yeah, there's no like scientific process. It's all you know, gut feel. Then when I got them pared down to the ones that I just obviously must delete, then I open Digicam with that view where you have like 2 lines of images at the top and a bigger view at the bottom, and then I just click across them. If I find one that's out of focus, I delete it, and then when I find one that's in focus and is the way I want it to be, then I will edit it, and that's about it. There's nothing really scientific about it. Digicam has some plugins, and I believe someone was working on an automatic detection of out of focus images. I wouldn't trust my images to that, sorry. So yeah, it's eyeballing it, there's no other way.
Chantal asks, when using Darktable, how do you know if the level of noise reduction is enough or not? Is it just by looking at it, or is there?
Yeah, you can see it. I mean, if you zoom, yeah, if you zoom in on the image, you can see the amount of noise that there is. Now, what you want to do is you want to get rid of as much noise as possible without losing the quality of the bird, right? It doesn't. The trees in the background and stuff like that don't really matter so much, but you shouldn't lose the quality on the bird. So one of the reasons I prefer the automated denoise based on the camera profile is it knows the ISO that you've shot the image at, and it knows that with this camera at ISO 800, it's going to have a lot of noise, so it applies a bit more noise reduction. But if you were using, so I've got a 70 and I've got a 60 and a 70 Mark II. So if I use the 6D, I can go up to about 1600 with about the same level of noise as the 7D has on about ISO 800. And the camera profile tells Darktable about that, and it does it correct. Where it goes awry is when you have really bad noise, like you've shot. I've got I'm not showing my screen now, but I've got an image of a kingfisher that I shot accidentally at ISO 7000 or something like that. I'd just come down from shooting the black eagles, and I had very high shutter speed set on the camera, and I was walking across the bridge at Wallace Sulu, and there was the half-collared kingfisher sitting on a branch. I quickly pulled up the camera and took some pictures, and then it flew away, and I didn't get another chance to get a shot of it. And it's the only picture I have of the half-collared kingfisher. So I cleaned it up quite a bit using the other denoising techniques, because the automated denoise from the camera profile just couldn't do it. So yeah, okay. You eyeball it basically.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's Keith has asked, can you stitch multiple exposures to create an HDR image in GIMP or Darktable?
I don't think Darktable is the thing that you would use for that, but there is a tool. I just can't remember what it's called. So, basically what you do is you prepare your images that you're going to put into your layers in Darktable, export them to JPEGs, and then merge the JPEG layers together in, there's several applications that can do it. I have done it in GIMP, but it is tedious and it's not really the tool for it. I will find out though, and maybe I will just make a little blog post about it or something like that.
Okay, that's useful, Derek. Corne just asked, would it be possible to get a recording? I think we normally will make the recording available for possibly on our YouTube channel, but not forever. It might be for a limited period of time, because we do plan to run more of these masterclasses, I think, in the future, which will have a lot more information. Derek?
Yeah, that's right. And it costs money to store and manage these videos as well. And YouTube's not the best place, necessarily the best place to do it. So we may create something where after the webinar, you can, if you want to watch it again, you can pay 20 Rand or something like that to download the video. But we haven't finalized that yet. We still, Learn the Birds is only 2 months old, and most of this last 2 months has been spent organizing and making the software work. So, but this one I will make available. I will send out a link with password to everybody who's registered, and it will be there for a few days on the Zoom website.
Okay, Shintel raises an interesting question. The issue he has with Darktable is that it isn't up to date with current cameras. My Nikon Z50 wasn't recognized until last month, and it still doesn't recognize lenses used via the FTZ adapter, apparently. So he's just asking for suggestions.
Yeah, look, I mean, the thing is if you're buying a brand new camera, even Adobe Lightroom doesn't have the new Canon R5, for example. Everybody's complaining at the moment that Adobe Lightroom can't process the files out of it. So they have to shoot in an older RAW format, which makes bigger files. This is normal in the industry. It takes a month or 2 months or 3 months for the software to catch up. What you can do is you can just check on the Darktable. There is a Darktable channel on Facebook, a group on Facebook. There's also an open source photography channel on Facebook, and you can ask there. Often you'll find that somebody's working on it, and maybe they have a beta available that you can play with. But yeah, this is a community-driven effort. So the other thing that you can do is sometimes if there isn't a profile for the camera, you can take a set of photographs and you can submit those photographs to the Darktable website, and it will speed up the process of creating those profiles.
Okay, thanks for that, Derek. Are there any other questions? Any other issues that people want to raise? Is there anything I missed? I'm just looking through the. I think I've covered. There are a couple of nice comments. Massive learning curve. Thanks, Derek, from Johan. And so Shintel says, so that's what the parametric mask does. That was right at the beginning.
Yeah, parametric masks are awesome, and these I've just touched on it, and there's just so much you can do, and especially if you bring together the parametric mask with the non-parametric mask. I mean, with the drawn mask. And you invert the drawn mask. So what you do is you do the parametric mask, and then you use the drawn mask to erase little bits of it in places that you can't by dragging the slider. And you really can do an awful lot with it.
Okay. Any other questions? I think if there are no more questions, we're going to come to a close. Yeah, just by way of concluding, just to say, just watch the website. You should get, if you've registered, you'll get a weekly newsletter on Monday, which will tell you what's happening. But just as a reminder, we've got Harriet Kimagishu next week on the 14th doing a webinar on birding Uganda. And then Derek's repeating is very popular and I think very useful photography tips for novice bird photographers on the 15th. So that's what's coming up. So we hope to see some of you back at those sessions. And thanks, Derek, for a wonderful, really informative webinar. I've just started using some of these applications, and this was incredibly useful as a way of kind of getting my head around what one can do and how to go about it. So thank you very much. And we'll see you all in the next webinar. Good night.
Thanks, everybody, for coming, and good night.